Powerful and provocative. Prophetic and practical. Informative and inspirational. How you gonna do better if you don't know what better looks like? I do. Come on, let's talk about it with me, the mind massager. What's up? What's up? What it do? Time for another episode of the Intellectual Stew with yours truly, James Kirkland. And I am thankful that you have decided to hang out with me for a little while. So let's get right into it. Let's get ready to get this thing going. This music starts grooving. I promise y'all, it makes me want to kind of groove a little bit. Y'all gotta, one day I'm gonna have to make it available so y'all can download it, so I can have my music. But yeah, so what's up? What it do? What's going on? How was your day? What's been going on in your life? It's another Monday, 9/11. Where were you? September the 11th, 2001. I remember where I was when it happened. I was September 11th, 2001. And if you tell me where you were, put it in the chat. Say hi, say cat, say dog, say boo, say something, and let me know I'm not here by myself. And that you're here with me, and let me know you're listening live. I would appreciate it if you would do that as well. But 911, I remember specifically what I was doing. I was actually on my way to work. I was living in Powder Springs, Georgia, and I was driving on my way to work and got a phone call from my then wife and told me that she was watching Good Morning America, and when the first plane flew into the tower, and then she came, and then a few minutes later, another one flew into the tower, and it changed our life. It changed our life, and I think it changed a lot of people. So we really want to take a moment to commemorate and remember all of those who lost their lives on that particular day for no reason of their own, just pure terrorism, pure hate, or some other agenda that was above me and you. But either way, we want to remember those. I mean, where were you? Think about that. How long ago how long has that been? It was in 2001. So that's been exactly 22 years. Where were you 22 years ago? Let me turn my phone down. I'm sorry. Where were you 22 years ago when that happened? I'm 51 now, so I was 29 then. But it changed the trajectory of our life. And we want, like I said, we want to take a moment to remember those who lost their lives. All they did was go to work. All they did was go about their daily lives. And all of a sudden, because like I said, of some agenda, because of hate, because of whatever the reason was, whatever reason, sometimes we're sold a lot of propaganda. We never know the truth. There's two sides to every story. Then there's the real story. But whatever it is, people died. And we need to remember those individuals on this day, 9/11. Well, y'all are there, but y'all ain't saying nothing. Talk back to me. Y'all know how I am. Say hello. Let me know you're listening. And not only that, but share this thread. When y'all share it, when y'all react, when y'all comment, then y'all help the algorithm, and then other people start being able to get listen to it as well. So if you all would help me out today, I would appreciate that. I'm getting ready to get into some good stories in just a moment. Then I got my friend, my guest contributor, Dr. Ray Evins. He is a therapist that we bring on from time to time when we deal with sensitive subjects. Hey, Ellen Dwyer, how are you? I appreciate you for all of your support. But I like to bring him on because everybody wants to, give advice. Sometimes I'm really scared to give advice because I'm not qualified. But I do like therapists because they have a pattern or a process as it relates to dealing with certain trauma. So therefore, I wanted to bring him in, and I will bring him in a few minutes. I want to thank Avery Thompson for helping me out on last Thursday night. We did What Were You Thinking? And for whatever reason, we had been dealing with domestic violence. I guess because I have daughters, and I see what's going on and how these young men and some of how these young people interact with one another, and they're always putting their hands on each other and things of that nature. So, yeah. So, but I wanted to get to the night though, because I saw a story today, and it really blessed me. It really did. I know it sounds kind of strange, but it really blessed me. So I want to get him. I want to talk about this for a minute. So, did y'all see the story about Michael Irvin this week? Michael Irvin, he played football for the Dallas Cowboys. Boo. But he played football for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's a contributor. He's a Hall of Fame. I think he's a Hall of Famer. But anyway, he's a sports analyst as well. And during the Super Bowl, I'm gonna get to the story in a minute. But when I saw the story, I got kind of excited because what I felt like we won another one, right? Because when you look back a couple of weeks ago when they had the Montgomery brawl, right? I looked at that was. So when he threw that hat in the air and all of a sudden brothers started jumping off the ship and swimming across the pond and doing all that kind of stuff, right? That was a win for us, right? That was a win. That really was a good win for us. And a couple of days ago, the U.S. Open, right? Coco Gauff, she wins the U.S. Open. That's a win. Black folk proud everywhere, man. That would mean it's a win, man. We got Montgomery. Now we got Coco Gauff. And that's a win for us. But then when Michael Irvin the other day, when he was exonerated, and I think this one went under the radar. And I'm going to bring Dr. Evins in a few minutes. But I think this one went under the radar because if y'all know some black men, tag them right now in the comments, because I want them to come in and I want them to hear this story, because this was a win for black men. And we let it sweep under the radar, right? Because, during the Super Bowl, Michael Irvin was sent home for what they allegedly said he did was inappropriate behavior. Allegedly, he acted inappropriately with a woman at a Marriott property called the Renaissance Hotel in Glendale, Arizona. See, the woman complained and said that he sexually harassed her. Then Michael was asked to leave the hotel and was sent home after the woman told the manager that he made unwanted advances and they were sexual and he sexually harassed her. Now, what happened immediately was the NFL Network pulled the Hall of Fame receiver off of the air. They said he couldn't do any coverage on the Super Bowl after the woman complained about his conduct. Now, after this happened, Michael Irvin had an interview with a reporter. First thing he said was, Irvin said his interaction with the woman was brief, public, and largely non-physical, and that he only shook her hand, adding he was a bit baffled by it all. Then he went on further to say that this all happened in a 45-second conversation in the lobby. He said, when I got back after going out, I came into the lobby and I talked to somebody. I talked to this girl. I don't know her. I talked to her for about 45 seconds. Then by the next morning, they had come to him and told him that they requested that he leave. Not only that he leave, but the NFL Network pulled him off of the air and said all because of an alleged accusation. Now, this is where I'm at on this whole thought tonight. And I know y'all gonna say I'm crazy. I don't care. I've been crazy before. I've been accused of it before. But this is what I got to get y'all to stop. And it ain't y'all, I know, because y'all are listening to me, so we all pretty cool. But it's some other people. I need us to stop black male hate. Because with this whole black male hate thing, we are always, well, not always, but most of the times, we are guilty and then have to turn around and prove our innocence. Now, Michael Irvin said, another quote, Irvin asserted that the hotel fabricated a tale to turn him into the next victim of cancel culture over an incident that that the NFL Hall of Famer never said never happened. So this woman that worked at the hotel said that he sexually harassed her. Thank God for cameras, because a camera view came, and let me put this up because I need everybody coming on to see it, because we got to stop this black male hate. Thank God a camera caught the footage of him interacting with this young lady. And when he was interacting with her, the camera showed that he did nothing inappropriate. He only saw her for less than 2 minutes and then went on about his way. Thankfully, the camera was there, because if the camera wouldn't have been there, guess what? He would have still been guilty in the court of public opinion. It's a sad indictment when we have to deal with not only the legal court, but the real tough court that we have to deal with is, he had no trial, no lawyer, no grand jury, yet he was asked to leave the hotel and sent home. Tried and convicted in the court of public opinion. Now, fast forward. Now, Mr. Irvin has been vindicated, because what he did was he sued the Renaissance Hotel for $100 million, and now he's settled that $100 million lawsuit against the Renaissance Hotel and has been reinstated with the NFL Network. If you watched football yesterday, you saw him on there. And if you watch Sports Center or Fox News, you probably saw him this morning. So now Mr. Irvin was almost a victim of cancel culture for something that he didn't do. But listen, let me say this. He was not the first black man. Let me pull this off so y'all can see my face. There we go. All right. He was not the first black man to be falsely accused of something. But thankfully, he was able to prove his innocence. Because you know what? So many weren't given another chance, and so many weren't able to prove their innocence. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to look at some instances throughout history and throughout the last several years of men who were falsely accused, and the repercussions. The ramifications of that said action. So, but before I do that, let me go ahead and bring in my good friend, my homie from Columbus, Mississippi, my friend Ray Evins. How you doing, sir?
Doing well, my brother. Good to see you.
Ready for today, Doc. I was ready for it. I knew you're doing well. How are you? I love when you do that, man. Your voice is amazing, Doc. I thought I had a pretty good voice, but if people hear your voice, they wouldn't want to hear me talk anymore.
Oh, no, you have a good one too, man.
I got a good voice. I appreciate that, man. So how are you doing today?
Doing well. This is actually my last day of vacation, and I return to work on tomorrow.
Okay.
So just been here at the house taking care of some things so that I can move forward with going back to the office.
Well, I appreciate you for taking time to come on and talk to me for a few minutes. And I know I throw you out there a lot of times blind, because we don't, and y'all got to understand, we don't really have many conversations before the show. So when he comes on, typically he's coming on blind, and he's responding off the cuff. So I appreciate him for that. But listen, y'all are a little too dormant for me tonight. I got to ask y'all some questions, and we'll get this thing going, because are you all familiar of situations where, because let me say this, Doc, and Doc, you can back me up on this. Understand how powerful the familial structure is, especially in the black family when there's a two-parent home, and how powerful that is because of what it produces. It produces solid children. I'm not saying that single mothers don't. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm telling you what the system has always tried to do to divide us as a family, because they know that we are stronger together. And if you want to really weaken the substructure, take a parent out of the home. And that's what has been transpiring since emancipation, even in the days of slavery. That was what was going on. They wanted to divide the household. They wanted to break a slave. And then even after the Emancipation Proclamation with the Jim Crow laws and all of the different things that have happened, they've always done things to try their very best to divide our families, right? And so I was looking at this trend today, Dr. Evans, and it kind of messed me up, man, because I started to look throughout history at how many black men have been falsely accused. I mean, we can start right here. Doc, I'm covering you up for a second. But right here, that's Emmett Till, right? Emmett Till, right there in the state didn't he come out of the state you came from, Doc?
Yes, sir. Well, the murder happened here in Mississippi.
It came, yeah, exactly. The murder happened. That's a good point because he was from Chicago. Can you imagine sending your child off to spend for the summer to spend time with the family? He gets down there. And they told him, they tried their best to tell him, they tried to tell him, but he ended up whistling at the little white girl at the grocery store, or whatever, at the grocery store. And then she told the sheriff or told the wrong person, whatever. And the rest is history. They ended up taking him out somewhere and they killed him. They killed him. They killed him graveyard dead. They killed that man. They killed that family's child. They killed Emmett Till. Let me show the picture one more time for those that don't know. They killed him. He was an African-American boy who was abducted, tortured, and lynched in Mississippi in 1955 at the age of 14 after being accused of offending a white woman, Carolyn Bryant, in her family's grocery store. They tried to tell him. I saw the movie now. I did, of course, I'm not sure how close the movie was to the original story. But Doc, let's talk about that for a minute. How I mean, he wasn't even guilty, right? Yeah. I mean, I guess talk about that for a minute because that messes me up.
I mean, we still live here in America where we do not find justice in our court system as others have the privilege in finding. Another thing that we see is that we see the emasculation of Black men, which takes away their male role within their communities. And one of the, I guess, the quickest ways of doing it is taking him from his community by involving him in the court system.
Absolutely.
For Emmett Till and for Michael Irvin, they never made it to the court system. And as Michael Irvin said, it took him back to a time in which a white female could make an accusation against a Black male, and others would take the law into their own hands. For Emmett Till, it was death. For Michael Irvin, it was financial death and the killing of his reputation. Yes, because he was treated as though he was guilty, and there was no evidence set forth. Look at this. They had cameras to capture the incident. They had 2 witnesses present, and the incident took place in a public area. And fourthly, it lasted less than 1 minute.
Less than a minute. And that was enough for the NFL Network to react. Not only kick him out of the hotel, but to send him home.
But now
they sent him home, Doc.
But now you can even look at that. What happened to Roethlisberger when he was charged with rape? So again, we are treated differently in the court of law and also the court of public opinion. It appears that we are condemned by the accusation, and we have to prove ourselves innocent.
Exactly. Now watch this, Doc. I'm gonna show a couple of other people. This guy right here. This is Ronnie Long. Ronnie Long is from North Carolina. Ronnie Long was freed from prison in North Carolina after having served for 44 years.
Man.
44 years of his life. I'm 51.
Yes.
That means I was 7 years old when you understand what I'm saying? This man spent 44 years in prison for a crime, and it was rape. Somebody said he did something that he didn't do. And 44 years later, they find out. How do you give that back? But that's just one. Watch this. This gentleman right here, Leonard Mack. Leonard Mack was wrongly convicted of 2 counts of criminal possession. Wrongly convicted of rape and 2 counts of criminal possession of a weapon. He spent 46 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit.
Wow.
It was 72 years. He was 72 years old before he was exonerated. That meant he went in prison when he was 26 years old. I'm not the best at math. Help me out. 46 years. Is that 1977?
1977. I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
1977. He's been in prison, wrongly convicted of a rape, and also was convicted of criminal possession of a weapon. And he has been in prison for 46 years before, but wrongly, falsely accused. Now, watch this stat right here, Doc. This stat right here says, a bombshell study in 2017 confirmed what Black people had known to be true, that Black people are more likely to be wrongly convicted of murder than people from any other group. To add insult to the injury of wrongful convictions, innocent Black people waited years longer than the average time it took a white prisoner accused of the same crime to be exonerated. In other words, if the white person was wrongly convicted, he would be exonerated a whole lot faster than the Black person who did. What kind of mess, man? What kind of system are we in?
We're in a system, they say that justice is blind.
Yeah. Right.
But we understand that it's blind to some things that some do, but it appears that it's not blind to the color of one's skin. And so if we take the 44 years of Ronnie Long's life, the 46 years of Leonard Mack's life, that time can never be recaptured or given back. Never. And also we have to understand in some states, you do not receive money for being falsely accused.
Isn't that something?
So after being exonerated, they let you out the front door of the front gate, and without any assistance to start a life for yourself after that many years.
Yeah. And then and that's why the recidivism rate is so high. Because after all that time, you've literally been institutionalized, right? And once you've been institutionalized, how do you become? Man, I got a little dog now that I kind of got by default. Hey, and if anybody wants to come on and jump on in the comment, jump on and talk with Ray and I just put the link in the comment. If you come on, as long as you stay on topic, we good. Now, if you start going in a whole other direction, I do know the power of veto, and I will block it. I'm joking. No, I'm not. I'm for real. But no, if you want to come on, please come on. Let's talk about this. This is a good subject. But real talk. It's what was I saying before? I got this little dog, right? And the dog it's not used to being around other people. It's not used to being around other dogs because it's not socialized. So it's institutionalized, used to being inside this little substructure or this little confined space, right? And so if people have been in prison for 30, 40 years, they don't know how to function. I mean, in 1977, we didn't have cell phones.
No.
In 1977, did we even have ATM machines? I don't even think we even had ATM machines back then. It was a very different time. And you got a 72-year-old man coming out of prison right now. That's different.
Very, very different. I mean, you have stayed in for at least 2 generations. So children would be grown. Grandchildren would be born that you've never seen, possibly great-grandchildren. And here you come back to a world that you no longer recognize. And the caveat is that the person was innocent all the time. All the time. And we must work to change our judicial system because, there was one governor, his last action was to put a stay on all death sentences.
Yeah.
Now, he did it on his way out because he knew that politically that would kill his career. So he did it on his last day. He was not running for re-election, but who knows how many lives he saved just by doing that of innocent people who were incarcerated.
I mean, and that's, and you know what, and you know what, I did some more research, and shout out to my homegirl. She, my statistician. She helps me get my notes and stuff together, right? So shout out to her. I appreciate you. She knows who she is, but I did some research, and I started to see a pattern, and I didn't really see the pattern when I first started doing when the topic came of Michael Irvin, because like I said, for y'all that just came in, Michael Irvin, the show has really started with Michael Irvin being vindicated. He was able to sue Marriott for $100 million for being falsely accused by a white woman that said he sexually harassed her. Well, the camera showed that he didn't. Yes. But thankfully, he was one that was able to overcome and prove his innocence, but so many weren't able to prove their innocence, right? And I've already shown. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
He was one who had the resources to fight the battle.
Now I was going to get into that in a minute, but go ahead and talk about that. Talk about that resources thing, because you're around that.
I have talked with many families, and the issue has been, we know that the treatment was unfair, wrong, illegal, but then when it comes to legal actions, they don't have the resources to fight in the court of law. So sometimes the battle ends right there. I know individuals who have been assaulted, beaten, but did not have the resources to bring the issue to court. And it kills everything right there, but it leaves a person harboring trauma and sometimes rage and anger. So having the mindset to not break the law because you have been violated is something that we often talk people or tell people that they must do.
Got you. And let me say this, and I've always said it. My dad told me something. I was trying to get him on the show tonight, but my dad told me when I was 15 years old that one day the black male would become extinct.
Wow.
And it blew my mind, because I thought of, the bald eagle extinct, the duck-billed platypus extinct, but a human being. And then so he went on to unpack that. And we talked about it recently. He said that we would become extinct through the prison system, through being on drugs, through homosexuality. He went through a whole spiel of everything that it would take to make us become extinct, right? And the biggest thing that got me was a prison system. And I was talking to one of my mentors, one of my college professors, and she got on me to remind me of my vision, what I was really working on. She's like, well, that was your passion. But part of my passion was to stop the pipeline from pre-K to prison. Because if you look throughout school, most schools look like prisons. If you look at the structure, it's almost like prison. You know what I mean? It's like a certain segment of society is being prepared, that they're going to go to prison. I mean, even, especially when prisons became privatized in the late 80s, early 90s, when prisons showed up on the stock exchange, right? And if a privatized prison is on the stock exchange, its purpose is to make money. Right. And every business, every for-profit business has a target audience. And the target audience for privatized prisons when they first started was young black men. If you read the book by Michelle Alexander called The New Jim Crow, you'll read how they warehoused a lot of young black men between the ages of 17 and 23 when they came out of high school. If they didn't have anywhere to go, if they wasn't going to the military, if they wasn't going to college, they were going to try to find somebody. So they made crack cocaine very enticing. It was a way they could make a lot of money and do it fast and cripple their communities at the same time. So I'm looking at this pattern today, Ray, and I start seeing all of these young men that have been falsely accused, like Jesse Johnson in 2004 in Detroit, Michigan, was found guilty of aggravated assault and sentenced to death for a 1998 crime that he didn't commit. He spent 25 years behind bars, 17 which were on death row. Finally set free after prosecutors decided not to retry his case, which was overturned in 2021 by Oregon Court of Appeals. They couldn't find any DNA. And watch this story. The policeman said that because it was a black woman that he allegedly stabbed, A white neighbor said she saw a white man leaving the house. She told the police this. Guess what the police said? No, a black man is going to be convicted for killing a black woman.
Yeah.
In Oregon. So Jesse Johnson spends 25 years behind bars, 17 of which on death row, before he kept appealing, and then they finally just decided after 25 years not to retry his case.
Mm.
That's just Jesse Johnson. What about Kenneth Nixon? Kenneth Nixon was 18, 19 years old. I said Detroit for Jesse Johnson, but it was Oregon. But Kenneth Nixon was in Detroit, 18, 19 years old, given life without a parole for a crime he didn't commit.
Yes.
They said he went and threw a Molotov cocktail in a house that killed a 10-year-old boy. And the reason they came up with that solution was because it was his ex-girlfriend's house. He had nothing to do with it. He was across town. They said he smelled like gas. Guess why he smelled like gas?
Wow.
He was a tow truck driver. But because some prosecutor or some police officer got you in their sights, now you fighting to prove your innocence. How does that work?
Well, and if you talk about reform, one of the things that would have to be put on the table is are consequences for those who knowingly lie and give false statements, give false evidence, from attorneys who will hide evidence to police officers who will plant evidence and make false statements, to other witnesses that will say that's the person in the lineup and really have no idea. That is also the reason that we have to support groups like the Innocence Project. Yeah, there you go. That's what I want to hear. Okay. That type of work has to be a concentration. It can't be a part of anything, but has to be a concentration in itself because the need is so great.
Gotcha. And I want to unpack that some more, but let me talk about a couple of more people. I got Tyrone Day. Tyrone Day in Dallas County. He was 19 years old. Notice what I said, 17 to 23. 19 years old when he was falsely accused and convicted of rape. Spent 26 years in prison until the Dallas County District Attorney's Office Conviction Integrity Unit, they did some DNA testing and discovered that he wasn't there.
Wow.
The DNA discovered that he wasn't at the scene of the reported assault, and it confirmed that two alternate suspects were at the scene. It also revealed that the woman who reported the sexual assault hadn't actually seen Mr. Day's face when she identified him as one of her attackers.
Wow.
Instead, she identified him from a far distance based only on a hat which she said resembled one worn by one of her assailants.
Wow.
Just because she looked across a dark room, saw a man with a similar hat, she said that must be him, and this man lost 26 years of his life. He was 19 years old, though.
Yes.
He was 19.
But now, mistaken identity, just think of a fair-skinned, black, bald man with a gray beard. How many of us are on the face of the earth? So if I go to a grocery store or a gas station,
you're going to see somebody like that.
And no one sees me or if I can't give an account of where I am for an hour and there's a crime committed by a bald man with a gray beard, then I would be guilty.
Yeah. Hey, y'all talk to me in the chat. Thank you. Avery said it's a corrupt system. Jacqueline Olea Waka Poindexter, I hope I said that right. She said that part, the resources, when Dr. Evans was talking about, we lack the resources. I got the link in there for anybody else that wants to join the conversation. I'd love to have you be a part of the conversation. But if you haven't liked this video, if you haven't shared it, will you please? Like I said, that gets the algorithm going and that gets other people to be a part of the conversation. So I talked about Jesse Johnson. I've talked about Kenneth Nixon. I've also talked about Tyrone Day. But then there's another gentleman by the name of by the name of David Wright in Chicago. Guess what? He served 28 years for a crime he didn't commit. He's 46 years old now and was accused of killing two men in the Inglewood neighborhood in Chicago when he was 17. According to David Owens, Wright's attorney, officers involved in Wright's arrest allegedly coerced him into a confession. They kept him in the room for 14 and a half hours. Told him if he signed a confession, he would go home. He didn't go home for 28 years. But do me a favor. He was 17. What I just tell you, 17 to 23 was the target audience. Sidney Holmes in Florida spent more than 34 years of a 400-year prison sentence for participating in an armed robbery he never was involved in. Check out how his story worked out. He's 57 now, but I want to read how the story happened. I want y'all to see this. Mr. Holmes was convicted and sentenced to 400 years in prison for the 1988 armed robbery of two patrons at a Broward County gas station. Mr. Holmes became a suspect through a strange set of circumstances. One of the victims described the perpetrator's vehicle as a brown, here you go, like you said, as a brown Oldsmobile Cutlass with a tan top and a hole in the trunk. The victim's brother, who heard this description, believed that he was robbed earlier in the day by the same perpetrators driving the same vehicle. Then, weeks later, the victim's brother saw a brown Cutlass while driving and provided the license plate number to authorities. This vehicle was registered to Mr. Holmes. Although Mr. Holmes' vehicle had key differences from the perpetrator's vehicle, and he had a solid alibi, multiple family members who spent the day with him as a Father's Day, at a Father's Day celebration. He still became the suspect due to this citizens investigation. Mr. Holmes was identified by one of the victims in a second photo lineup, despite not being identified in an initial photo lineup that also contained his photo. There was no physical or scientific evidence, nor any corroborating witnesses linking Mr. Holmes to the crime. Anyway, he ends up serving 34 years of his life. He went in when he was 23 years old.
Wow.
Everyone I just told, and that's just a couple. Like my statistician sent me, she's still sending me stuff right now. This list was longer than this. And these gentlemen are going in spending 25, 30, 44, 46 years of their life. I'm 51. I am 51 years old. Mr. Leonard Mack spent 46 years in a state penitentiary, having to survive, I'm sure, to deal with violence because he's a rape. Mr. Day had go through this thing. He signs a confession thinking he's going home. He ends up getting out, got to register as a sex offender because somebody decided that they felt like, or they lied, just like Mr. Till. And this happened in 1955 with Emmett Till, 14-year-old boy who didn't get to live out his days because somebody decided that his life wasn't worth it. And here it is, because this is the paradigm shift that I was trying to go to, because the target audience on somebody's balance sheet were black and brown people that looked like me. Thankfully, I had a daddy in my life that had the means and the wherewithal and provided the guidance so that I would go to college and, at least get a good little education. I didn't finish college the first time. I got out. I dropped out and got in the car business, and I ended up going back. I got a master's degree now, but I went through all those different things, right? But thankfully, I had a daddy in my life to teach me consequences, right? But he tells me now, because he works in the school system, or he used to work in the school system prior to his heart attack, and he tells me about how the young men down there, they're not afraid to go to prison. They say they got family members down there. They're not afraid. So since this happens far too often, Doc, and you're a pastor, you're a pastor in the spiritual sense, but in the secular sense, you're dealing with counseling, and you recognize trauma, and you recognize, triggers and all of these things. What are we going to do about it? Hold on. Let it be rhetorical for a hot second. What are we going to do about it? Because the Jews have organizations like the Anti-Defamation League. You mess around, Kyrie Irving just shared a video, and all of a sudden he's kicked out the league. I mean, he's can't play and all this stuff, and the Jews are standing up, and he ain't said nothing negative about nobody. He just made an implication by sharing a video. Kanye said what he said, and the Anti-Defamation League, Jews, they stand up for it. But black people have been the victims of atrocities of racism. Y'all Negroes can miss me on trying to say that black people can be racist, because if you don't understand the definition of racism, do a little more research, because there's a distinct difference between racism and prejudice. Now, I can be prejudiced and not like you, but when we start talking about power structure, that's what racism is. That's when when one race can oppress another race. If you can't oppress another race, then you can't be a racist. It just don't happen like that. So, until we figure out how, because what they've done is they've been masterful in dividing us. Because now when we see another black person do something wrong, well, he must have did this. Or we become so insensitive. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm choosing sides. Right, wrong, and indifferent. I'm sorry. If I gotta choose, I'm choosing. I'm sorry. I got favor. So here the question is again, Doc. You've had time to think about it. I see you taking your little notes. What? He's so detailed. What are we gonna do? At least during the movement they organized.
Yes.
At least they had funds to get people out of jail when they protested.
Uh-huh.
What are we gonna do? Talk to me.
Well, now here are just some things off the top of my head. Number one, parenting.
Okay.
The idea that you have to have a foundation to even believe or know that you have certain rights, to know that you are a person of equal value. And I think those things are instilled in children from the home. So we have to just the idea that what's wrong and right, there's no right time to be mistreated. And for our young black children to understand that, not to the point where they curse out adults or take things into their own hands, but they come back to that family and they report how the violation occurred. So I think parenting. Another thing would be to have some type of anti-misproportion league or something for us. And I know that there may be a legal arm of the NAACP and other organizations, but somehow that needs to be unified to be more active. Or we need to financially support those who stand with persons of color when there is injustice. You remember what Al Sharpton is doing. What is the other attorney?
Ben Crump.
They're not asking the families for money. They're just showing up.
And you know what? And this is the thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But when Sharpton shows up, I hope I spelled disproportionate right. When Sharpton shows up, or when Crump shows up, what makes me mad is when Buppy Negroes that finally realized that they're not white because they get exposed too. Yeah. They finally get woke. I forgot the new term they called it. When they realize then, because they talk about Al Sharpton and Ben Crump, like dogs.
Yes.
But they're not showing up.
No, and I have plenty of white associates who still talk about Reverend Sharpton as though he is some ill to society. And this is what I shared with one white friend. I say, if my son runs into a situation in which he's treated unfairly by police, I will contact Al Sharpton, because these things go under the radar unless you have someone who will bring in news stations, newspapers to report the incident, because if not, their name is never heard. So we have to support those brothers who are working for our communities and understand that they're doing a good work. Another thing we have to do, I think the Black church has an obligation.
Okay.
And I know that there are some pastors who said, look, I don't get involved in social or political issues, but I said, shame on you. because I don't think there's an area of life where Christ is not involved. And if Christ is not involved, then there's not an area of life where the church should not be involved. And we have to minister to the whole man. And sometimes that is financially supporting individuals when they need attorneys and assisting them with legal fees. Now, again, we have to hear the story. We have to know what's going on. But at the same time, when we have injustice, I think the church ought to respond to that.
And let's unpack what you just said. You said we have to know the story. We have to know what's going on. But you know what? And sometimes even in knowing the story and knowing what's going on, even when a person's wrong, you got to keep them from keep the sentence from being disproportionate. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
I've seen somebody be guilty and they deserve time, but they didn't. I think it was said that when crack cocaine came out, it had a very minimal amount of cocaine in it, but it required a mandatory 10-year sentence. But people that were getting powder were getting very, very, they were getting treatment. They weren't even getting sentences, right?
Well, now what I was referring to, we need to understand the laws as they are.
Gotcha.
I mean, when you have a young 15-year-old with a gun in hand, that will be mandatory time.
Yes.
And there's nothing no one can do to change that because the law is as it is. So at the same time, you have to teach our young men, look, you cannot go out here wielding a gun like everyone else and think there won't be great consequences. So part of that goes back to the education, from the parenting, from the church to the schoolhouse. All of those should be teaching our children what they need to live and not die.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. I appreciate every aspect of what you just said, because that whole disproportionate piece. If we had, and I like this one right here the best, Anti-Disproportionate League for Black People, because we have enough Black millionaires. We got billionaires now. We got millionaires and billionaires, right? And they'll never be able to spend a fraction of that money in this lifetime, right? And I've always said, if you want to really change communities, then millionaires need to move back to the hood, and bring their tax dollars back to the hood, so that pricing will go up and we'll get better textbooks and we'll get better policing and all the redlining and all those things would be, at a minimum, because now you got people with influence back in the hood starting to change those situations, right? And so if we did that, then we would be able to start creating these anti-disproportionate leagues like the Anti-Defamation League. Because go ahead. You going to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah. We Brother James, we have to be careful with that.
Okay.
There has to be some level of I guess, security if we're going to encourage someone to go back into a neighborhood where everybody's trying to leave.
But listen what I said. Hold on, I'm not cutting you off. You said some level of security. But the thing is if hypothetically, if LeBron brings his $1 billion salary back to Akron, his tax dollars come with him, right? Mm-hmm. So if the reason why we're not as effective in politics, because we can vote our butts off, but we're not effective, is because we don't have any money. The money is what influences politics. They let us vote it out and let us fight it out while they're in the back room cutting deals, to decide what's going to happen in our communities, right?
Go ahead. I understand that, but now here's what used to happen. We were better able to organize when we had very little money.
Oh, I agree, no doubt.
So there's a lot of unique things there, and the reason I say that, I guess, it's still fresh on my mind. Young Dolph and what's the guy out in Los Angeles who was killed? Had a shopping center.
Nipsey.
Yeah, Nipsey Hussle. So you're looking at those who attempt to do it, whose lives are taken, versus sometimes putting your resources in place in order to even get some communities approachable, because things are so chaotic there. So we don't I would not want to live in certain neighborhoods, and I couldn't ask another brother or sister to live there just because of the truth of what's going on there. There's a lot of.
Go ahead. And you're right. I mean, certain neighborhoods. I mean, but
Yeah,
I'm not saying all neighborhoods. Don't get me wrong.
yeah,
I'm not saying
I
that we
got
need
you.
to go move to Cabrini Green, but Cabrini Green's not around anymore in Chicago. But I'm saying somewhere close, you know, and you know, in a zip code, and then typically you know, I part of my degree, my undergraduate track was community and international economic development, and we talk about, you know, in order to develop a community. You know, first of all, before people care how much you know, they need to know how much you care, right?
Yeah,
And so
right.
one of the most effective ways of community development, I think it's the second or third step, is relocation. That's why Father Flagger in Chicago lives among the people that he ministers to, right? He lives
Yeah,
among those individuals, and he's
yeah,
always done that. Because when they see you, now this is the problem, I think. Because it happened up in Roxbury. I think it was Roxbury. What was it, in Massachusetts, when the outside entities came in and tried to change a community without involving the community in that change, right? And they were so ineffective in being able to do so. So I'm saying choose just any community to move into. You need to have a vested interest in that community, family, you know, knowing people in that community, and then the resources allow us to do what we couldn't do. The movement was great. But it became even greater when white folk in the news got involved in it, right? Because they started to put the light on some stuff that wasn't being seen at first.
And look to see what Magic Johnson has been able to do with his movie theaters in neighborhoods where others purposely try to avoid. So it can be done.
It can be done.
It just takes someone with the vision and the resources to get it done.
Absolutely.
Sometimes there's vision, and sometimes, usually there's resources are is the most critical piece to come up with.
And that's it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, you know, that is how important resources are across the board, from the justice system to revitalizing communities financially. Resources is, the key.
Gotcha. But at the end of the day, here, this is what we got. Because I only named 5 or 6 gentlemen, 6 or 7 gentlemen, right?
Yeah.
And it's way more than the gentlemen that I named, right?
Of course.
And those are the ones that aren't guilty. Now, there are some that are guilty, and they've been in prison for, I've been out of high school now for 33 years. I know friends that went to high school, people, I'm not going to say friends, but people I went to high school with that have been in prison almost since the time we got out of high school, 30 some odd years, right? They've been institutionalized. They've were a victim of the system. We can call it whatever we want to call it. But at the end of the day, somebody's father, somebody's son, somebody's grandfather, somebody's nephew, somebody's uncle, somebody's boyfriend, somebody's husband has been taken out of society. And it's okay. I get it for the ones who are guilty. If you do the crime, old saying is you do the time, right? But for those that aren't, and for those that we killed in the court of public opinion, you know what I'm saying? The ones that really weren't guilty, or we didn't know if they were guilty, but we automatically just assumed that they were guilty, right?
Right.
What are we gonna do? How? Because we're in this position that we're in. Doc, it's so scary right now that people don't even want relationships because they've been so socialized without having them. They've not seen mama with her husband. They've not seen grandmama with her husband. They've seen unbalanced relationships, and they've raised their children on their own for the last 25, 30 years. So they've been so desensitized. And a lot of the ones that could have been their better half, unfortunately, were robbed and stolen from society. And you and I, we've looked at 1 Samuel 30. We talked about it. When David and the men were gone, that's when the Amalekites came in and burned up the city.
Yes.
Because the city was uncovered.
And it is still that way for so many segments of our communities, in which they are not viable men who are giving back to their society, and it hurts the whole community. And here's what we have to understand as people of color. we have to understand the value of the man.
Yeah.
And I don't think as a whole we have really understood that. We have not, I know they say that there are some African nations in which the women rule, or, but now here we live in a society that was, on the structure that was there where men lead. So what happens when men are no longer there? Sometimes that intelligent, strong woman pushes forward, and she does a wonderful job with children, with educating her children, providing. But that's not the story for the majority. The majority of children are left in less than conditions, with a deficit with money, a deficit with food, a deficit with a sense of community, and that deficit then continues for generations.
Yeah.
So somehow we have to find a way to stop, the bleeding.
Yeah. It's sad. It's really, we're in a sad situation. And like I said, we got to figure it out. And let me say this, but Stu Nation, those that are listening, I appreciate you all for stepping in tonight. I know it's not one of those conversations where we're going to have a whole lot of chatter. I know y'all enjoy those when men and women go back and forth, and we do all that kind of stuff, and that's fine. But we gotta look at us where we are right now. And this is where we are. We're in a very bad state. And we've become so desensitized to it. That's my problem. That's my issue. When we become so desensitized, when we can see genocide literally happening in our, I mean, y'all don't realize how many, if you don't see somebody for a few weeks or a couple of years, whatever, they probably in jail. Wow. They probably been taken out of society. They probably been taken out of society. So if you would, man, so we got to figure out how. I mean, we got to start the process of stopping this mentality before they get it. Do y'all not realize that these schools not playing with these kids? They got resource officers in school, and they will put your child in handcuffs if they mess up in their school. For real. 5-6-year-olds, they act out in the school. They're putting them in handcuffs. They're preparing them. I remember my little nephew one time. They took him down to juvie. He wasn't 8, 9. He wasn't but 6, 7, 8 years old. They're not playing with your children. They're preparing them for prison. They're worth more money in jail than they are on the streets.
Wow.
They pay money per head. If they're in a federal prison, if they're not paying tax dollars on the street, all this. Let me tell you this, and I'm about to get out of here because I want to keep this in under an hour. But let me tell you this. Slavery never died. Slavery remanifested itself.
Right.
That's all it did. Slavery never died. Chattel slavery never died. It went to indentured servitude. Then it went to Jim Crow, because they came up with the vagrancy laws. If you didn't have a job, they'll put you in jail. And if you were in jail, they'll come and lease you out and put you on somebody's plantation anyway. And now, guess what? The privatized prison system, the corporations have turned a lot of those men in prison into slaves, because they're in there working for pennies on the dollar. Right. And guess what? Right. Somebody's getting paid on it. That's why people are getting falsely accused. Because guess what? If they got 20 years out of somebody, and they're putting $30,000, $35,000 a head on them jokers, what's that, $600,000 they got out of somebody's life? That man was in prison for 46 years. And if it costs $25,000 or $30,000 a year to incarcerate him for 46 years, that's about $138,000. No, that's way more. That's 1.3 million. Oh my gosh. For real. But we're not standing up. But Molech is coming and the children of Molech are coming and taking our children and burning them up in our very eyes. I just said something. Y'all have to look that up. They're coming and taking our children and burning them up in our very eyes. Because guess what? When they go to prison, you go too. Because you got to visit them.
Yeah.
You got to keep money on their books. And I've seen women now that have resorted to having relationships with people that are in prison. That's how bad society has gotten. Doc, they said it like this: done got laid in the evening. Something like that.
Yes, it has.
and the sun is going
and we need to be mindful that time is winding up. If we're going to do something to contribute to our society, we have to do it now. And what we can do is make a difference wherever we are. Let our voices be heard. Stand up for truth. And when we have those who are falsely accused, when we have those who are just accused, to allow the system to prove their guilt, instead of assuming that someone is guilty just because of the accusation.
Yes, Doc. That's a good place to close. Thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I appreciate you guys. I really do. Doc, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Always jump on. You always dang, look what you said. Lakeisha Reynolds said that privatized prisons can make up $374 million per year, according to statistics.com. Wow. And you think people worth more money on the street and you ain't paying no taxes? Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, y'all go back and listen to this if you didn't hear the whole thing. You got some good nuggets in here. Thank you, Dr. Evans. I appreciate you every time I need you. You always come through for me every time. I appreciate you. All you all that are listening, share this thread. Y'all don't have to listen to it now. You can listen to it again later. It's real things, real issues, and we got to make it. We got to make it. So I'm out. As I always tell you, the world is. Hold on. Hold on. I'm working on a couple of things, and I'm hoping to share some ideas with you all soon. I'm hoping to share some things with you all soon. So thank you for who was that? Erlanza. Hey, Erlanza. Thank you for y'all gotta let me know y'all are there. If I know y'all are there, I'll talk to y'all during the show, and that make me talk a little bit more. And then I can get some more interaction on these comments. But I appreciate you all. But we're out of here for real. As I always say, the world is changing. But my question for you is, why do you remain the same? Y'all have a good night, and we'll catch you on the rebound next Monday night. I might come on later in the week. Who knows? But good night. Intellectual.